Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Soulganize Your Life and Wynne's World of Numerology. I believe numerology is an actual language that our souls are already familiar with, but can lead us into that soulganizing our lives rather than organizing our lives around that pesky little ego. I hope to be your self growth facilitator for today. And if you are suffering in any way, I hope to help you sort of reorganize the way you're feeling and experiencing your life as it is showing up today. Today, on this video, we're going to dive into the number three, the number symbol three. And I don't think you've probably studied the number three quite like I'm going to lay it out, even if you're familiar with numerology. So let's get started. In previous episodes, you have learned about the definitions of the one and the two energy and how our current state of consciousness at any given moment is either going to bring out the highest potential of those numbers or, unfortunately, the lowest potential of those numbers. And again, the one is the first. It is making a new beginning. It's starting something new. It has a new, fresh idea. It might be leading people in a place they haven't gone before. It's a very masculine energy. It wants to make an impact on the world and kind of say, here I am. And then the number two energy is the more feminine partner to the one. It is Eve's to Adam. It is really there to sort of support whatever the masculine energy had sort of initially, decided that it wants to engage in. So when masculine and energy comes together, or man and woman in this case, in our physical reality, we make a baby. And the three energy is just that 1 + 2 = 3, and it's the childlike energy. So let's dive in. And as we normally dive in, we use the solar cross, and we have 4 quadrants in that cross. We come down and we go around. Let's just dive in. So here's the three energy. Comes up here, goes down, goes across, goes around. So hopefully you can see that three in this experience of the solar cross. And again, it is signifying the best of the parents. It is the childlike energy and the childlike view of the world. So, as again, we've done in previously, the energy of us comes down. And the first thing we are on this planet is the spirit before we even get into the body. So, spiritually, what is the three representing in its purest form? Well, we are all technically children of God. There is also that three relationship spiritually in Christianity that says there is a Father, a Son, and a Holy Spirit. Why all three? Well, that's what makes the relationship and the connection. The connection is actually invisible. It is a feeling, it is an experience, it is a knowing, it is a sensing. And that is really what the three child usually expresses, right? We're watching kids run around and they're acting like, what are you acting from? Like, where is this joy coming from? Where is this connection to everything and interest and curiosity? Well, you could call that coming from the Holy Spirit or the invisible, non physical realm. And it's really important for us to understand that we are the child in this equation, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, or we are the Son, whatever you want to call it. That is where we are in the human form. So it's really important for us to know our place and to present the best of what God is providing us in the moment, which I believe at the highest form, again, of consciousness would be an innocent love, regardless of the circumstance. And lastly, spiritually, my favorite person on the ever exist on the planet that I know of so far is Jesus. And they always say, wherever two are gathered, Jesus is there, promises to be there in spirit to make the bond holy, just like in holy matrimony, right? There's a man and a woman, but there is basically a third entity there trying to invoke the power of something invisible that will keep the couple together. And then ultimately, right, we go into the physical form and then there's a body. All right, so let's go into the physical. So here we go. We're going around this circle in clockwise direction. And the physical, again, is the embodiment of both a balanced viewpoint on the masculine and the feminine viewpoints, right? So even though you might be a female or male body, you still can balance those two expressions in you of the male and the female, or the masculine and the feminine. And these qualities most likely were inherited long ago from your parents and your ancestors before we had social media and TV and things that also taught us about what it means to be a female or a male. Now we have so many things pouring in as to say, like, what does it mean to be a male or a female? So in the physical body, this is really complicated. It's 2025. I think we can all agree. Gender is extremely complicated right now. And so I think in the three physical body, I would try not to make it complicated. I would chill out a little bit. I would express myself not necessarily on one side of the spectrum or the other, but balance your masculine and feminine in a way that you can celebrate, that you can do both those things, sort of assert yourself, but also pull back and be supportive. And really just try to think like, what is the expression of my gender that requires the least effort, but I'm most passionate about? Again, don't try to express too far over one end of the spectrum. You can get really caught up in maintaining that. You can get too involved in your identity, the physical body, and it's really more about have fun, engage in fun activities. A kid in the morning is basically saying, "Hey, what are we going to do today, mom and dad?" So I can get excited about it, right? That is really that childlike physical energy. I love to braid my hair, and it reminds me all the time that three separate physical pieces of hair can make one beautiful relationship. That's more about the three in the physical body or in a physical experience, such as a braid. So, next up, we are going to move towards the emotions. And I've already been talking about the happy childlike energy. And, children are usually pretty happy. They're also very fully trusting of their caregivers. Again, they're asking them, "What are we doing today?" Like, so it's the emotion of loving the creator, loving, like really pouring out awe, childlike wonder. That is the beauty of the three emotionally, kind of non questioning and trusting those higher vibrational emotions that might be happy or joy or bliss for you is probably drawing you closer to the creator. You just want to be literally happy for the sake of being happy when you're under the three energy. And again, if you're a parent, or an adult, we're supposed to be developing other people to want to share those good feelings with each other. But of course, there's suffering in the world. And a three energy would be asking you to say, okay, you might be suffering, you might be uncomfortable, but this is a catalyst towards joy. And you can only do that if you develop an awareness of like, this is happening for a reason. I want to know what all of this is so that I can develop some level of peace and joy about the fact that I'm living and having this experience. Here's a bad analogy. Sometimes you're in the shallow end of the pool, sometimes you're in the deep end, and sometimes you're in the diving board. They're all great places to be. Depending on your perspective, I don't know if you don't know how to swim and you're in the deep end, maybe not. But really, it's trying to find joy in the part of the pool that you're in. If you're not joyful, use that suffering. You don't know how to swim, in the deep end, use that as a catalyst to learn how to swim. The creator wants you to learn how to swim, and so try not to judge it and kind of go with that emotional experience of suffering as a catalyst towards joy. All right. And so lastly, we're going to go through the mental piece. We always, again, are taught to think last. We are born as a spirit, show up in a body, start to have an emotional experience about it, and then we're taught to think. So mentally, the three will experience two very distinct point of views, and it will try not to make it a contradiction in its mind. If you can do this, if you can look at two polar opposite point of views and not make it a contradiction, you have used the number three, I believe, in its highest capacity. This is the beauty of the three again, making two contradictions, two sides of a coin into one thing, one beautiful relationship. Again, kind of referring back to what I said about the braid, right? Is taking three things that maybe look separate and making them again into one beautiful relationship. All right, usually now at this point of the video, I will move into talking about karma. And when under the influence of the three in a numerology chart, we don't calculate any karma. However, as always, we are subject to the psychological effects of the ego. So, again, you're going to see this joyful, authentic expression from a child, and the ego over time will dampen that. In the American dream, it will say you shouldn't just be happy for no reason. You should become a good consumer, a good producer in this world, pay your taxes and buy as much as you can. So we start to identify through consumption or through identification of being successful. And this really keeps us engaged in the body very out of balance. So we develop sort of these insatiable consumptions of things or patterns with food or drinks. I mean, I can walk by like a boba tea place and they have a list of like 25 drinks, or, like they'll give you enough flavors so that you just keep coming back. Like, oh, I have to have another flavor. Doritos has 45 flavors, I think, at this point, because they know that it piques our three interests to find, oh, is it a little different? Can I experience this just a little more? And then we get involved in money and friendships and achievements. And there's like, even in our self improvement world, there's a never ending sense that I must self improve. And so, again, the ego is going to tell you over time that to be a productive member in society, you need to produce things, you must consume things. And then we keep busy with this. We keep actually consuming ourselves to death. And so we're getting caught up in chasing these positive feelings that are very temporary and very based in a other thing, rather than developing or remembering that childlike joy that all of us carried when we were born. And so my big statement about the three is you will want to come to understand that you simply cannot get enough of what you don't need. So if you find yourself going back over and over, your ego going back over and over to consume something, it's probably telling you, hey, I'm never going to get enough of what I don't need. Addictions really can show up here. And then the energy that it takes to digest in our body or to clear out our homes, it's a lot and it can be exhausting. And only you can know whether that's really happening or not. And the last thing I want to say about the ego is the ego will hijack negative emotions and express them outwardly to other people to change their behavior. So sometimes you'll see a three energy being very moody, very up and down, or outwardly gossipy or something like that, where they're really trying to express emotion in a way that gets people to change their behavior. Actors and actresses are expressing inauthenticity all the time in order to get people to look at them, right? And say, you did a good job, you're acting, right? So it's kind of that same thing. Any three who's not acting will be expressing something, possibly to get other people to change their behavior, even if it's just turning over and looking at them. The good news, again, at the end of this video, as I always say, is free will gives us the ability to reverse the upside down relationship that we have created with the ego and with the parts of the three that are scattered and overly consuming and getting caught up in things. So, you can always engage in your free will. You can go back to expressing, how was I when I was a balanced self, when I was joyful and creative and childlike, rather than being someone who was obsessed with possessing things or achievements. And again, you can realize that you really don't need anything of those things to make you happy. You can find happiness staring at a sunrise or watching a bee fly around or whatever. Like, that's a three energy. Children are just purely happy for the sake of being happy because it feels good. And that comes from the non-physical. The non-physical realm makes the joy possible when we're faced with physical circumstance that we judge are like, this is not okay or this is wrong. This is the true power of the three, the connection to the most divine and highest good at all times in the face of the physical circumstance. So thanks for hanging in there while I got all that out. And if you want to go deeper and learn about how the three possibly shows up in your own personal chart, you can book a session with me to go over that. Or if you know your chart already and you just have some further questions based on the solar cross and how I explain that, please feel free to book a session with me. I'll also give you a free copy to my ebook. It's called Soulganize Your Life. You can also go to soulganize.com to find out more. And all of the links are in the episode notes below. So again, thanks so much for being here and sticking with me through this. We have a lot more to get through in the upcoming episodes, but I will, for now, wish you to stay free and see you in the next video.